So I wanted to create this video to talk about some of the materials and resources that I use to pass the Network Plus exam. Just gonna go through like a list of materials that I used and give my thoughts on them. The first material that I'm gonna mention is the Exam Cram Network Plus book. I started reading that in August last year, and it took me a couple of months to finish. I think I finished in November. Um, It took me a long time to finish the book because I was taking notes for each chapter, and I don't think that was a good idea. I also don't think the book was the right choice for me because I went into Network Plus with little to no knowledge of networking. So while the book was very short compared to other books, it did not contain the necessary details for me to actually understand the material that it was presenting. Um, I skimmed through another book a couple weeks ago. I think it's the Sybex Network Plus book, and that book seemed to be a lot more beginner friendly and contained a lot more details and examples. Although that book is about 1,000 pages, almost double the length of the exam cram book. So I think that if you're someone like me with very little knowledge of networking, a book like that would be a much better choice, even though it is a lot longer. The second material is going to be Andrew Ramadyals' study guide. He has a study guide on the Network Plus exam objectives, where he goes through each of the items in the objectives and gives some information on each of the terms. That was a good way for me to review what I had learned from the exam cram book, as well as identify the areas that I was weak in. Um, for subnetting, I use the subnetting videos from the YouTube channel called Practical Networking, and as well as Professor Messer's Network Plus playlist. Those videos really helped me understand how to subnet and work with binary numbers and IP addresses and things like that. It was very hard for me to figure out subnetting at first, but after a while, after doing the exercises with them, uh, following along with them, I got the hang of it. Although I will say that I wish I had done more subnetting practice because when I took the exam, I realized that there was a lot of things I did not know, particularly how to apply subnetting in like real life scenarios. It's not enough to just know how to calculate the broadcast IP or the subnet IP, find the magic number or whatever. You also need to know how to like use subnet mask and figure out the correct subnet mask for the particular requirements for a network. The next resource that I'll mention is going to be WordWall. WordWall was very helpful for me in memorizing the cable connector types and port numbers. Um, I pretty much used that to drill down those two things into my head. I will also say that for port numbers, there was a YouTube video that was very useful as well that talked about some memory tricks you could use in memorizing the port numbers. That was um that was pretty helpful, and I think that like even after taking the Network Plus exam, I will still have memorized a lot of the port numbers for many more months based on the memory tricks that I learned. Another resource that I used was the Jason Dion's Udemy practice quizzes. Those quizzes were hard, and I would say harder than the exam itself, but I think those quizzes are a really good indicator of how ready you are for the exam. Once I was scoring in the high 70s and 80s, I felt ready to book the exam. So after taking the exam, I will say some things that I think I could have done better and that I should have done. I think I should have focused more on subnetting. I should have done more problems related to subnetting and gotten a better understanding of it. I also think that I could have done more packet tracer labs. Um, setting up network devices, configuring them, troubleshooting them. Those things would have been really, really useful for me to have done. Also, learning, the command line options, tools. I actually looked up what resources I could have done used for that, and it seems that the 101 lab books would have been a good choice to be prepared for that kind of stuff. Even though the 101 lab books are kind of old, and I think hasn't been updated for the Network 9 exam, I do think a lot of the material in those books covers what is found on the exam, just based on looking at the table of contents. Another thing that I wish I had focused more on would be the use cases for cable connector types. It's not enough to just know how to identify them. One should also, I mean, I should have also have studied their use cases and learned which cable connector type would be appropriate for which situation. But regardless of all of that, I still passed the exam, and I do think that it is not too hard of an exam. It does have tricky questions, but I think if you study the exam objectives well enough, memorize the port numbers, memorize the wireless standards and Ethernet standards, um, it should be enough to get at least a minimum passing score. If you really want to increase your chances, kind of guarantee a pass, I think learning how to troubleshoot networking issues and how to set up networking devices, as well as subnetting, it that would be very useful to learn that. Um, yeah, that's pretty much it. If you're going to be taking the Network Plus exam, just I want to say good luck.